otherwise it's not fair of me to try and put all of that on somebody else because they are not my counselor. They are not my therapist. And it took me a long time to realize I was doing that as well.
Hello, and welcome back to You Need a Counselor podcast. My name is Dr. Julie Johnson. I am the president and founder here at Heart and Solutions, Mental Health and Behavioral Health Counseling in Iowa. So if you are looking for in-office, in-school, or telehealth mental health counseling or behavioral health counseling, give us a call today to get started.
And I'm Chrissa Hunt. I am the Vice President at Heart and Solutions in charge of our BHIS department. So BHIS stands for Behavioral Health Intervention Services. And that is our program where we go in home and work with children ages 4 until 19 on different behavioral skills. And we involve the parents as well and can see them at home, school, office, or telehealth right now as well. And this is our podcast, You Need a Counselor. So we are designed for people curious about counseling, but have barriers keeping them from experiencing the benefits of counseling. Our mission is to share stories about counseling, good, bad, and indifferent, and spread the message that everyone can benefit from mental health and behavioral health counseling services.
So we post on Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Central. So we encourage you to batch up whatever horrible task you hate doing. So putting away your clean laundry or meal prepping or walking on the treadmill or writing thank you cards, whatever you are putting off doing, go ahead and make a date with yourself to do that. Sunday nights at 5 p.m. You can put on the podcast. That gives you the entire week to get scheduled with your counselor or to connect with our guest from that show that week or the resources that we talk about that week. So our guest today, speaking of BHIS, our guest today is Kendra Gliem. She is a BHIS counselor in our Cedar Falls, Waterloo, surrounding areas here in Iowa. Hi, Kendra. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So you double majored, or you had a double emphasis major. You had theater performance and theater for youth at UNI. And oh my goodness, how cool is that for a situation where you are working with children and doing play? There's a reason that in theater, a play is called a play. There's so much play that goes into performing and into theater. Tell us about what you studied in school and why you studied theater and performance and theater for youth.
Originally, I actually started my college career as an English major. I was thinking about doing like editing and all that, and I realized very quickly that it wasn't for me. I'm good at writing papers. I'm good at English, basically writing, reading, all that stuff. I'm good at it, but it wasn't what I wanted to do as a career. I'd always really enjoyed theater. My dad encouraged me to audition for one of our it's not a main stage play, but it was one of our like smaller plays that they do within the department called Best of Broadway. And so I like to sing, like to dance, like to act. So I didn't know if I was any good at it, but I was like, oh, I'll try it. Did that, got in. And once I got to know all the people I was performing with, I was like, wow, I'm having a really good time. Maybe I should take some theater classes and just see how it goes. And then they hooked me. So I switched my major to theater performance. It was just performance. I was going to go into acting and doing all that because I thought, why not? Let's go for it. If you're going to do it, go for it. But then I took a class called Drama in Inclusive Classrooms with Greta Berghammer. She's one of my very favorite people. And this class was helping teach kids on the spectrum how to play, essentially. And I remember her telling me at the beginning of that class, if you're not a theater for youth major now, you will be at the end of this semester. And I laughed at her and I was like, no, I've never wanted to be a teacher. That's just not for me. Teaching theater doesn't sound like fun. especially for the youth. I was like, it's just not for me. And she was absolutely right. By the end of that semester, I added theater for youth because I realized that it's not like teaching in a classroom. That was just never for me. Shout out to the teachers. They're amazing. But that structure was not for me. And seeing how we teach youth theater I was like, yep, this is it. This is what I like to do. And there actually is a lot of mental health type work that you can do with theater. And that was something I was always interested in. But very unfortunately, I didn't think I was smart enough or good enough to do any sort of counseling type work at the time when I was young. Obviously, I feel a lot different about that now, but at the time, I didn't feel very confident about that. So, yeah, I then started working on that degree, and I've actually worked out in the theater world with youth theater. I teach classes at Blackhawk Community Theater every now and then. I'm looking to actually teach classes there this summer at some point. And I do still perform when I'm able. It's a lot of fun, but I realized that an actor's life. So it just wasn't what I wanted. And it took a lot of realizing, but then I found out that there's like options to do counseling work and theater. There's a master's program called drama therapy. And I looked into that, and I might pursue that one day. I don't know, but I thought that was really cool. And so I started looking into that a little bit more. And eventually it brought me here where I'm loving my work. I do role plays with kids all the time. Even if it's with our little characters or our conversation bubbles or whatever it is, we do role play. A lot of theater games are actually mental health based and behavioral health based. And it's very cool to see how you can bring the play into counseling. Yeah, so I hope that answered your question. It was a long one, but
awesome. I did not know you could sing.
It's debatable. I don't know. I think I'm okay.
No, that's really cool. Okay, so how did you go from graduating with that major to BHIS? What led you into this position?
Yeah. So I, after graduating, worked at a theater in Omaha called the Rose Theater. It was awesome. So cool. I got to work with all different kinds of populations and age ranges of kids. And I got to perform in plays for kids. And I just loved watching their responses to what we were doing. And while I was there, I met a couple of children who inspired me to want to help them with their behavioral health, honestly. And I didn't have the tools to do that or know what I was doing. So I decided I wanted to go back to UNI and get a psychology degree. And so I did that after I was done working at the Rose. So in 2018, I moved back and I started working on that, got, that degree that I needed, and started working towards finding work like that. And I worked with a couple of companies that were specifically adults with special needs. I have a very strong place in my heart for people with special needs. I love working with that population, but there are also, just kids that really need help. And I have always felt that there's not enough resources for them. And I wanted to help contribute to that. So I just kind of started looking, and I actually found you guys on Indeed. If anyone's, looking for counseling type work, Indeed was great. I was actually skeptical about Indeed. I'm like, I'm probably not going to find anything. And then I found this job, and I really liked the flexibility that it offered. I loved the job description. I was like, yeah, this is exactly, I knew I wanted to work with kids, knew I didn't want to teach, but I knew I wanted to work with kids, help with some sort of, mental health or behavioral health. And also enjoy the work. I wanted to enjoy the work. And so I thought I would, to be honest, when I first applied, I was like, I might not qualify for this. I don't know. And so I applied because I was tired of doubting myself. And I was like, just do it. Just apply. It's fine. Like, the worst they can tell you is no, you don't qualify. And then now you know. So that's what I did. And then I got interviewed with Brittany, and I thought she was super awesome. And then I did my second interview with Chrissa and Brittany, and I was like, both of these women are awesome. And I was like, oh, I remember doing my second interview and going, I hope they hire me. I want to work with these two people. I was like, these two people are people I want to work with. So I was very happy when you hired me. But yeah, so I don't know. I guess that's kind of how I got here. I was always looking for a job like this, but it took me building my own confidence up to tell myself, yes, you can work like this. Like, this is a job that is for you. So, and it definitely is. I love this job.
Absolutely. It sounds, I mean, there's kind of this theme of, wanting to follow passion, wanting to follow the things that you enjoy, that you're like, okay, I want to get up and do these things because I like doing them. I want my job to be something that I enjoy doing. And then at the same time, there's kind of this thread or theme of, oh, but am I good enough to do that? Oh, but can I do that? Right? Or can I do a good job at that? Because I really want to, because I care so much about it. And so I think that I love that you're sharing that, because I think that that's so common in such a shared experience that so many people have, and it's difficult for us to put that into words the way that you have. So I think that is very, very beautiful. So you talked about drama in inclusive classrooms. Tell us a little bit more about what that is and what you learned there.
Yeah, so I loved that class. We went to Kittrell Elementary and Elk Run Heights, I believe. So we were working with really young kids that were diagnosed with autism. And Greta explained to us at the beginning of the class that, kids on the spectrum often don't have that creative play naturally. They, how kids naturally just start playing at a certain age and pretending. I think it's like 18 months. They start naturally pretending with their toys and stuff. But kids on the spectrum don't really have that. They need to be taught how to play. And so Greta wanted to do, honestly, some experiments on how can we help them learn how to play. So not only was she, taking data on how these kids are learning to play, how well it's working, all that, but she was also teaching us as students how to interact with kids on the spectrum, especially at that young age, and how to help them when they have behavioral outbursts, or if they're struggling with wanting to interact with us even at all, things like that. And teaching them how to be creative. So then as they get older, especially socially, it helps. It was such a cool experience. It's almost like you had to be there, but yeah, I learned a lot, and I just wanted to keep learning more about how to work with kids in theater, but especially kids on the spectrum. I really have, I can't stress it enough. I have a very strong place in my heart for kids with special needs. So did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Oh
So you talked about some of the activities that you did, which I'm sort of similar to what you did in that class too, with like role playing and things like that. Can you talk about how you implement those in your BHIS sessions?
Yeah, for sure. So while I do typically do role play exercises with like little characters with my younger clients. I also do role play exercises with my older clients as well, but typically it's us role playing a conversation. For example, I have a client who struggles with social interaction, and so her and I sometimes role play how conversations might go. And I'll have them go poorly and say, well, how would we react to that in a way that's not going to upset you or them and stuff like that. Or I'll have them go really well and I go, okay, well, now where do you go from here? You got all the answers you wanted. Now what? Stuff like that. So I really enjoyed doing role play in that way. I shared my BHIS video was the conversation bubbles, and I do that a lot too, because sometimes I'll get clients who are a little bit too eager to get to know someone and they don't give them time to give their answers. And so I'm like, okay, we got to slow this down. Why don't we write it out and wait for the answer? So I like stuff like that. And then it's so silly because we do games like red light, green light, and which helps us work on like our patience or listening skills or Simon Says, or like I've encouraged one of my clients to play dress up, like, oh yeah, let's turn this into a character. Let's just, why not? That's why. Or when we read stories, I'll do my voices and I'm like, oh, or I'll get really low like this. And the kids love it. And they're like, do it again. And I'm like, okay, I'll do this character, but you got to do this character. And stuff like that. So, I actually really soon, hopefully I'll be able to bring what we call AB conversations. And they're just short scripts where you have person A and person B, and there's a situation that can be interpreted however you want. And there's a client I want to do those AB conversations with because they're struggling with social interaction and interpreting what other people are saying to them. So like they're misunderstanding what others are saying and taking offense to something that maybe wasn't actually supposed to be offensive or wasn't supposed to be mean. It was just a comment. And I want to work on those AB conversations with them. So that way I can help them with that social interaction. Cause we used to do that all the time in my theater performance classes. We would do AB scenes and then our teacher would say, okay, do it this way with this in mind. Or he would like tell both of us, you have this objective, you have this objective, but don't tell each other what your objective is, right? And so then we have to play those scenes. And I can bring that type of work into behavioral counseling, absolutely, because kids have everybody has different reactions to literally everything. So I think that those are really useful.
I love so much of what you said. I love that. Well, first of all, I want to say that that conversation bubbles activity is really, really great. If you're listening to this, you can find that on YouTube. We'll link that video as well, so you can watch Kendra's conversation bubbles YouTube video, because it's a really, really great one that parents can use at home with their kids as well, in addition to in BHIS. So I think that's a really, really great one. I was laughing when you were talking about sometimes how children have a difficult time letting somebody else, the social skill of letting somebody else answer the question that they asked. And I was laughing to myself because when we do these interviews, that's the reason I mute myself when our guest is talking, because it's hard to do. So it's not just hard for kids to do, it's hard for adults to do. It's a social skill that just continually needs practice. And so I love that you're helping those children be able to identify those skills that need to be built up, and then identifying things that they can physically do to make that happen, right? So for me, it's the mute button, but it can be like, if you ask a question, if you hear a question mark in your voice, tap your leg 30 times. before you talk again, right? Or watch their mouth, because when they stop moving their mouth, that's the time to talk again. And so I think that those are such small skills, but they mean so much, and so they're not something that a parent or a guardian or a caregiver is going to necessarily sit down and go, okay, Johnny, we're going to work on your ability to wait for the person you're speaking with to answer your question. But it is something that is perfect for BHIS and that has that long-term impact for that child. So I just think it's such a great example. And I just was laughing to myself when you were saying it, because I was like, I'm on mute right now for that reason. The other
I
thing,
struggle with it too. It's okay.
it's a hard thing. The other thing I love is these AB conversations. You're effectively doing social stories, but you're doing interactive social stories. Social stories where, yes, we can feel what is happening, but it doesn't have to be as personal. We can see the situation play out and experience the situation playing out, but without our ego as a person trying to protect and defend the situation, or our own behaviors, what we naturally might do. Like, well, I would normally argue with that because I need to be right, right? Like, I'm right and they're wrong. But when we do it in play, when we do it in role play, when we do it with characters, when we do it in social story or AB conversations that are kind of scripted out, then it takes that piece, that part of us that tries to defend those kinds of things, out of the equation, and lets us try on a different way to do it and a different way of thinking about it. Reminds me of Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Yes.
That one, is it Scenes from a Hat, where they'll do a scene and then Drew Carey will say, okay, nope, now do it as mermaids. And they do it as mermaids. And he says, okay, now you really have to pee, and you've been up all night, right? And you are a snake with a top hat, right? And we do the scene again. And it's so cool because it's the exact same words, actions, scenario, right? But the scene is totally different depending on what's going on internally. And I think that's so amazing for communication style, being able to identify, like, I can say I like ice cream in a really pleasant, fun way. I can say it in a really sarcastic, rude way. I can say it in a hurtful way, right? I can say it in a questioning way. But it's the same exact words. So I just love that you are helping children to understand that, because it's not something that we naturally pick up. We assign meaning to different ways of saying things or different words. We assign meaning based on our own experiences. And then as we grow up assuming that other people are assigning the same meaning to those situations and experiences and words, and trying on these AB conversations or trying on these role plays allows us to see that, oh no, other people aren't assigning the same meaning. I think that is so powerful. So you also talked about your own kind of journey into the mental health field and the counseling field, and the pursuit of this. And I just think it's a beautiful marriage between performance and counseling. So as you were moving into that field, you had some doubt about your ability to do it. So tell us, how did you work through that doubt that you had about yourself?
Well, the first time I started recognizing that I should just try and stop telling myself, no, you can't, was I was talking to my best friend's mom. And we were just kind of chatting about where we thought our life was going. Me and my best friend were talking to her about, oh, yeah, I've thought about doing this. I've thought about doing that, and she said, okay, forget all that. She goes, just stop talking. My best friend's mom is so blunt. I love her so much. But she was like, just stop talking. If you didn't have to worry about money, what would you do? And I said, well, I'd rather, I'd want to do theater is what I told her. And she said, okay, then why aren't you doing that? And I was like, well, yeah, it's easier said than done. Like it would cost me. And she goes, she's like, stop. Just, why are you doing that? Don't worry about the money part of it. She goes, you should do what you love. You should do what you want to do. And I thought, well, okay. And so that kind of got the ball rolling in my head that I can do whatever I want. Whether I think I'm good at it or not, I should try, because the worst that's going to happen is I'm told no. Mm-hmm. So I first started that with all the theater stuff. When I took that class, the drama and inclusive classrooms, I thought, well, why couldn't I do some sort of counseling or therapy, or why couldn't I? And so then that kind of got that ball rolling of how can I combine these two things that I'm passionate about? Because I was always kind of silently passionate about mental health. Because it's, big stigma. You shouldn't talk about your mental health. You shouldn't tell people you need help. You shouldn't tell people you have problems. You shouldn't tell people you're feeling sad. You need to be happy-go-lucky all the time. And that was kind of the feeling I was told all growing up is, stop crying. You don't need to be mad right now. You need to be happy, or at least present yourself as happy, or you're doing something wrong. So when I got to college and I found out that that's not true, you don't have to act like that all the time. Then I started this kind of figuring it out that, oh, maybe I should see a counselor, stuff like that. I was like, I got things I need to talk about. I don't know. And theater helped with that too, because theater is all about, showing your emotions in an authentic way. You're sharing your truth. That's what we say all the time in theater is no matter what character you're playing, you will bring a little bit of your truth to it. And so at that point I was like, well, yeah, I can share my emotions however I want if I need to. And, as long as it's not in an inappropriate way, I can share, how I'm feeling and stuff like that and be honest. And so, yeah, I was kind of just on my own little journey that I realized it's okay to be open with my mental health and things that I'm working on or need. And then, yeah, I don't know. That's it just kind of it all just kind of blended together. It's hard to explain that because it's like, yeah, I have to think back. But it's really mostly yeah, I don't know, just recognizing in myself that I can, it's okay. It's okay to need. I think everybody should see a counselor or a therapist. I whether you feel like you have quote unquote issues or not, I think everybody should. So you can always find something to talk about that you may need help with. Nobody's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so how did I know you mentioned once you got to college, you were like, oh, maybe I should see a counselor. So how did that process go of finding a counselor? And what was that like for you?
So I did this play that brought up some memories for me that I didn't realize maybe I needed help for. And so one of my professors recommended I go see the on-campus counselors. And so I did. I set up an appointment, and the lady I had was really great. She was nice, sweet, listened to me, made me feel heard. Again, I thought if you needed a therapist, you were probably crazy. That was the thought I had all growing up was, if you've got a therapist, there's something really wrong with you. And obviously that's not the case. Again, I say everybody needs a therapist or a counselor in some way. It's okay, but that's a big stigma. And so I saw her for a little while, and then she left, and I was in the process of getting a new counselor on campus, and it just wasn't working out very well. For some reason, I don't know if they were just really short-staffed or really busy. I think about that time, everybody else on campus was also like, I might need a counselor. So I was struggling, and so I kind of gave it a break. But then when I moved back to Cedar Falls, I was like, gosh, I should look into counseling again. I think that was really good for me, and I felt a lot better. And it unfortunately took me years to actually finally get a therapist. I see one now, and she's awesome. And I love seeing her every week. I look forward to my time with her, and there will be stressors in my week where I'm like, man, I can't wait to talk to her. I'm like, I got to tell her about this. And so, there's nothing even really huge or major in my life that's going on, but I still am like, I need to talk to her about this, because it's not fair of me to put that on my friends or to constantly be going to my partner, Tyrell, about, my issues. I'll bring them up to him sometimes. I'm like, man, I'm really annoyed about this thing. I'm going to talk to Kayla more about it in session, but it's not fair of me to try and put all of that on somebody else, because they are not my counselor. They are not my therapist. And it took me a long time to realize I was doing that as well. Yeah, when I first got back to Cedar Falls, it is a little expensive, I will say, looking into getting a therapist. But if you have Medicaid, there are lots of this is for anyone listening. If you have Medicaid, there's a lot of therapists and counselors out there who will take your insurance and stuff like that. Yeah, at first I was worried about the money aspect of it, but then I don't know, I just again kind of fell into the doubting that it would work. I don't know. I don't even know why. I don't know why. I think it was because of COVID. I was like, I can't do online. I was like, there's no way. It'll be weird. I couldn't do it. So I waited. And then when I started this job, I again went, if I'm going to be working with kids, I need to make sure that I am sound in my own mental health to make sure that I can help them in whatever way they might need. And then I also had my son, and I was like, well, I really want to be well adjusted for him. I know that sounds really weird, but it's like, I don't ever want him to think that I'm putting my own stress onto my little baby. Right. So I thought that it was smart to get a therapist, and it's great. I feel way less stressed. I feel like I'm able to do this job a lot better. And I feel like I'm parenting better as well. So I can't stress enough. Everybody needs a therapist. I'll say it a million times.
Absolutely. What a great share. And thank you for that, because it is so important. And, sometimes there are those barriers where we feel like, oh man, is my mental health, am I worth the money that it's going to cost every week to do this? Right. Because we have those barriers. And I love that you were able to say no, it is worth it. And also, if we can't do it for ourselves, because sometimes we are in that place, we can't do it for ourselves, but we can do it for the people around us. We can do it for how we will show up for the people that we love. the partner that I want to be, right? The mother that I want to be, the father that I want to be, the counselor that I want to be to the people around me, the coworker I want to be. It is sometimes we can't do it for ourselves, but we can do it for the people around us that depend on us, so that we know that we are as strong as we possibly can be, mentally and behaviorally, so that we're able to take care of them the way that we want to. I think that's such a great point, because a lot of times it's the caregivers. You are, Kendra, you are a caregiver. You and 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 so for people who are naturally caregivers and care about the people around you, and you give that care actively, right? It just radiates out. And so for people who are that way, it can be even more difficult to get counseling for ourselves, because it feels like, oh, do I deserve this, right? Is it worth that money that could be spent on my child, or could be spent on whatever other thing for my family, right? And so I love this share, because I think it just is very relatable for people who might be on the fence about starting counseling for those reasons. So even if you can't do it for yourself, maybe you're not in the place yet that Kendra got to. But if you're not in that place yet, but you hear in Kendra's story that you can do it for those around you, you can do it for the people you love. I think that's a wonderful way to be able to accept counseling, and then start to do it for yourself, because you start to get those benefits. Like, you feel less stressed, you feel like you can show up for people, and authentically be who you are, which is a caregiver. And I just think that that is a wonderful approach to it. I also, as I was listening to your story, it just sounds like emotion, the feeling of emotion, the sharing of emotion, the showing of emotion was such it was so taboo growing up for so many of us. We weren't allowed to show emotion. We weren't allowed to feel uncomfortable things. And if we did feel them, there was guilt associated with them. So I feel disappointed, and now I feel guilty because I showed that disappointment to somebody, right? And so as for a lot of us growing up, that feeling of, well, I can't show emotion, that you had mentioned a few things, right? The idea of, like, nope, don't cry, right? Like, be happy, you should smile. When I hear parents say "you're okay" to their kids, that upsets me, actually, because, like, you're not okay. Like, if I fall down and I've hurt my body, I'm not okay. And being told you're okay means, oh, okay, well, I don't feel like I'm okay, but I am okay. So what's wrong with me? Why do I feel like I'm not okay? And it just kind of perpetuates that. So I think that these are things that as parents, it's really easy to say to our kids, or to think, and they get a little scratch on their finger and they want to show you, and they want, and you're like, we need to leave. Like, put your shoes on. and, and so it is really easy, especially in our busy lives, to not validate those feelings that our children are expressing to us, in terms of not doing the things they're supposed to do. A lot of times there are feelings behind that they are expressing in that way. And so it is so important that we validate the feeling, but we reject the action, right? So
Yeah.
if my daughter, it throws her shoe against the wall instead of putting it on her foot, because she feels overwhelmed, because we are rushed, right? And when we're rushing, she is overwhelmed. Also, she's probably hungry, because she always wants a snack, right? And she's
Me too.
yeah. So, so she throws her shoe against the wall instead of putting it on her foot. It is hard to know, and it is not natural to know this, that we can validate the feeling of overwhelm, but we can reject the shoe throwing. And I think a lot of times for parents, it feels like, well, if I acknowledge the overwhelm, then I'm giving my child an excuse to throw the shoe, that I'm saying it's okay to throw the shoe, and I'm saying it's not okay to throw the shoe. And being able to separate that out is so important. And I feel like that's what theater did for you. It allowed you that safe place to express and feel emotion. In theater, if you put yourself in the place of that character, and if that character is angry, if you put yourself into that angry place, you can express your anger through that character's actions and words and situation. And so
sharing some of your truth.
Yeah, exactly. It gives us that safe place to be angry, to be disappointed, to be frustrated, to be overwhelmed, and to be encouraged for it, right? And if for a lot of us who didn't have that in the real world outside of the theater, right? It can become that safe space. And so what I love about your story is that, that theater was your safe place to show emotion. You were able to recognize that in the children that you were working with, and you were able to go, okay, these are kids who need a safe space to do this, but they don't have the skills to do it, right? So I want to help them have the skills to do it, the behavioral skills to do it, and the theater skills to do it, so that they can experience what I've experienced, that safety, that freedom to express our feelings and to not have to put on, it's a different kind of masking almost, because if we grew up in a family, or if we grew up, we all grow up in a society that says smile. It says be happy. It says don't bring other people down. And so when we're forced to wear this mask, I tell the story of when I crossed the finish line at my marathon, I looked like this. And the announcer said my name, and he said, "Come on, smile, right? Isn't this a great day?" And I said, "No,
I just ran a marathon, man.
I'm not happy.
Smile. The picture of me is like one of my favorites, because I am not smiling at all, and I refuse to. And so when we grow up in a society that says wear this mask, right? Wear this mask, act this role, play this part, and then we get into the theater where it's like, oh no, you can play all of these different parts, and it's your choice. You get to choose what part you play. You get to choose how you portray that part. There's such a freedom in that. And I think it ties so beautifully into your passion for mental health, because the counseling space, there is a safety and a freedom in there too. Similar to theater, that is a safe place to express your emotions, to feel your emotions, and to be supported for it. So I just love what you've shared about emotional safety in these different places. And so many of us are looking for emotional safety. It's hard to find. It is far between. And so when we do find it in our romantic, like you brought up, like when we find it in our romantic partner, when we find it in our friends, when we find that emotional safety, it's easy to go, okay, well, that's my safe place, and bring all of our stuff to that person. And so I love that you identified, like, no, counseling allows us to have that safe space for that emotional output that is designed for that emotional output, right? Our friends aren't, and our partners aren't, but that my counselor is designed for that. So I just think it's such a beautiful share. So thank you so much for it. And you are also a BHIS supervisor, and I didn't bring that up at the start. But I will say that leadership too, there's this connection between leadership and teaching. And I loved what you said in the beginning about how when you thought of teaching, you thought of a classroom. And yeah, that sounds horrible. Like, I used to feel bad for my middle school math teachers, because, like, first of all, math is terrible. And then you have to teach it to 12-year-olds, right? Like,
Yeah.
That sounds horrible. But there are people who love that. But I, like you, I'm not that person. But what I love about it is that you still have the heart of a teacher, just not in that way. And so through these avenues of theater and BHIS, where you're working with children and families in BHIS and role modeling these things for them, role playing these things for them, you are teaching, just not in that kind of way. And as a leader as well in this organization, as a BHIS supervisor, you are teaching as you're leading. It just looks very different from a 7th grade math classroom.
Yeah.
I just think it's awesome. So if you could give one suggestion to somebody who might be on the fence about starting counseling for themselves, what suggestion might you give that person?
It seems really simple, but try it. What's the worst that can happen? They say you need extra help. That would be the worst thing that can happen, right? They're like, nope, we're putting you in a facility, I guess. That would be, I don't know. It's not likely going to happen. So let's try it. What's the worst that could happen?
Absolutely. And if I'm a person who needs to be at inpatient, I'd rather be at inpatient than need to be at inpatient and not be at inpatient.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
I like that you identify that too, because that is a common fear. That is a common barrier that people go, oh no, like, are they, and because the way that the mental health field began, the history of mental health is not pretty. It's not pretty how it used to be, and that those things continue on for people, right? Am I going to go to an asylum? We grew up watching Beauty and the Beast, and the way that Gaston was able to get Belle's father out of the way was he told the town that he was crazy, right? He said, yeah, tell them about the beast. They're going to lock him up. We all grew up with this message, right? And so, and countless others. And so I love what you're saying about try it. Just try it. And I like the worst they can say is thinking on each of these. And that is a mental health technique. It's go to what's worse than that. What's worse than that. And I think it is a great piece of advice.
Well, and I actually want to correct myself too, because I would actually say the worst thing they could say is, I can't help you.
Mhm.
And I don't think I know any counselor or therapist that's going to say that. I don't think so. Yeah, as you were talking, I was like, oh man, you know what would actually be worse? Is if they were like, I don't think I can help you. I think that would be worse. I don't know. But there's probably worse than that. Yeah. So just try it. We could come up with a million scenarios in what would be worse than that. So I think, yeah, just trying it and seeing. It's like a little experiment in your life. Like I've told Chrissa before, she's a lot faster than me at a lot of the supervisor stuff. So I've made it a little game for myself to try and beat her or catch up to her. Not because I don't know. It's not because I'm trying to like be better than Chrissa or something. I just think it's fun to challenge myself. Because Chrissa's been doing this a lot longer than I have. So I'm like, okay, let's see if I can catch up. So that's challenge yourself. Try it. That's what I would say. Yeah.
She's faster than me too. Trust me.
She's so fast. I told Brittany that too. I was like, Chris is so fast.
Her brain just like, it just goes before I know what's happening. Yep.
Yeah. I love it. I'm Kendra Gliem and I need a counselor.
Awesome. Me too. So does Chrissa. I love when counselors have counselors. I love it. I love when counselors have counselors because it is so important. This is a hard job. It is a hard job in the best of circumstances. It's a hard job on the best work day there is. And so I love when counselors have counselors. It's amazing. And it's great role modeling as well for others. Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here on the show today, Kendra. This was great. And we'd love to have you back also, because I feel like there was a lot we could have talked about as well. So we'll throw a whole second episode if you're open to that.
Okay, yeah. Thanks for having me. I would love to come back.
Awesome. So if you are in the Cedar Falls, Waterloo, or surrounding area in Iowa, and you are interested in behavioral health intervention services with Kendra, that is our in-home service for children 4 through 18. And it is 100% covered by Iowa Medicaid. So if your child has Iowa Medicaid, there's no fee to you. There is no cost to you. And you don't have to drive to an office and pack up all the kids and bring them all in there. Kendra will come to you. So it's a really, really great service. I feel like I wish everybody knew about it. So if you're wondering if you can afford behavioral health counseling for your children, if they've got Iowa Medicaid, you absolutely can. There is no cost to you. So give us a call at 800-531-4236 if you would like to get set up with BHIS with Kendra.
Thank you for listening to the You Need a Counselor podcast. We are so grateful that you are here. Now, we want to hear from you. Text us or give us a call at 515-650-3231. You can also find the You Need a Counselor podcast on Facebook and Instagram. If you've enjoyed today's show, please take a moment to like, review, and comment, as all of these things help others to find and benefit from this podcast as well. If you're in the state of Iowa and interested in mental health counseling or behavioral health intervention services, give us a call at 1-800-531-4236. And if you're a provider seeking play therapy CEUs, you can find us at patreon.com/youneedatraining. We'll see you for the next episode, Sunday at 5.